With January fast approaching and the beginning of a new year almost upon us, let's have a look at some spreads for a January bullet journal setup. These ones are from the Mystery Journal, which is a journal I give away to an unknown person, so I'm including a mixture of organisational and self-care spreads. Hi there, I'm Erin, thank you so much for joining me. Let's take a look at the supplies I'm using to bring this January setup to life, starting with the journal. This one is the Sage Leaves journal from Sassy Pigeon HQ, and I'm basing the entire theme around this PET tape that I picked up recently from JOURNALSAY. The design on this one is so unique, I've never really seen one like it. It has flowers and it has castles and butterflies, which are all pretty standard, but it also has things like fish bones. I used the colour scheme from this tape as the basis for all my other supplies, so I drew out the dark purples, the light pinks, and some of this kind of pearlescent white shade as well. These purple origami papers are from a set from Daiso, and they're really interesting actually. The back of them is craft paper coloured, so very interesting textures going on there when we rip it. These are actually mother of pearl coloured pearlescent envelopes, and I went for the envelopes rather than the A4 sheets because they were cheaper, so I'll just open them out until they make kind of a flat piece. This iridescent vinyl I think is supposed to be used in a cutting machine, but I usually just cut bits and use it for decoration, which is what I'm going to do again here. It has kind of a yellow reflect, which is cool. These purple floral vine PET stickers are from JOURNALSAY as well. And so is this washi tape, which is actually one from a set, but I'm only using the one for this theme. The designs on this one are so pale pastel that they're barely there, except for the gold gilding, which is positively gorgeous. And I mostly used this washi tape to prop up half of my book. This one is from Paper Monogatari, but I do end up bringing it in on one of the weeklies towards the end. Let's get started on the cover spread. I really like the look of layered elements and I really like the look of torn edges, so I'm combining those two elements here, and I'm going to be placing the pearlescent paper underneath the purple paper to give us a really cool layered and torn effect. Most of the time I'm a full spread for a cover kind of a gal, but this time we're going to be doing just the left page for the January cover, and the right page is actually going to be the January calendar. I've jumped in with pencil already and drawn out where that calendar needs to sit so that I don't accidentally decorate anywhere that is supposed to be calendar, and I'm using what I like to call the corner collage approach to decoration here, which is where we weight all of our pretty towards the corners of the spread and leave the middle a little bit more open for the functional stuff, or in this case the January header on the left page, which isn't functional but it does tell you what month this is, so maybe it's a little functional, I don't know. There is a little bit of an element of a yellowy brown in some of the stickers, and of course we have the gold gilding in the washi tape as well, so I decided to go over the brown torn edges here with a gold marker just to give it a little bit of something. I won't do that all the way through the setup, but for this first page there was a lot of brown going on there and I wasn't feeling it, so covering it with some shiny gold. Also, there's something about new journal season that just sees me going through glue tape at a rate that is not like any other time of year. Maybe it's all the journals I've been setting up, that's probably it. It is kind of satisfying that the glue tape I've switched to matches the theme though, that's kind of fun. The pen I'm using here is actually a metallic paint marker from Artex. I have their set of these and they're spectacular, and the purple is just such a good match for the purple in the PET tape, so of course I do go through and kind of swatch things next to each other to make sure that everything I'm using together will look nice. Sometimes I will make a full-on mood board, and sometimes I just kind of put them all next to each other on my desk and eliminate by eye like that. And I'm feeling flourishy this time, so we're going to add some flourishes onto this lettering too. And it's finally time for the star of this whole theme to show up, the PET tape. I found this one a little challenging to work with for this theme because most of the designs on it are pretty big. They take up most of the tape width. There aren't that many kind of medium-sized designs here. The ones I'm cutting out at the moment, these kind of skinny hexagons, are the only ones that fall into kind of a medium-sized design area. Otherwise, they're pretty big, or they're like a single bubble or a single butterfly or like a couple of flowers. But that's okay because I have a workaround, and that is to place things on the very edge of the page so that the design kind of falls off. You end up cutting off quite a bit of the PET tape, but you can reuse those offcuts at the top of the page or on the other side, and so it ends up being a pretty economical way to use a big designed PET tape like this. Now, before we get too much further into this, I thought I'd explain the whole mystery journal concept in case you haven't seen any of my videos before, or particularly the mystery journal setups. This is a journal that I set up for 6 months of the year and then give away on my channel, and the mystery part of the name comes from the fact that the winner of this journal at the time I'm setting it up is a mystery. I don't know who it's going to end up with, which means I need to make it pretty flexible. I need to make it something that could apply to anyone. This is always a little bit confusing for people to understand. I actually set this up really far in advance, so I do the whole journal across kind of November and then send it out in December and then just post the videos once the month kind of becomes relevant. So yes, the winner of this journal will have it in time to use for the first half of 2025. Yes, I do set up every month from January through to June in this journal really far in advance. It's just that I don't post the video for that month until it's relevant to inspiration for people. So I just hold on to the footage, and it's helpful for me to have that footage in the bank so that it's a bit easier for me to get my video schedule going month to month. It gives me a way to give you a different kind of approach to inspiration for a journal every month, so I'm giving you 2 videos worth of inspo rather than just 1. And it also gives me an opportunity to use up some more of my stationery, because I have quite a bit. I'm in a very privileged position to receive quite a bit of stationery for free, and I don't think I could ever use all of it for myself in my own journal, so this is a way to maybe play with some things that I wouldn't typically do for my own journal. There's also the fact that my own journal is set up to reflect my lifestyle, and I'm a self-employed person. I work from home. I'm mostly a content creator. I also do some freelance photography, so my journal setups maybe aren't applicable to the average person. So at least this way I can show you something that may be a little bit more in line with what you need. The giveaway for this particular journal has already closed, but I'll be doing another one for the second half of the year, so stay subscribed and keep an eye out if you're interested in entering for that one. We've moved on to the calendar page now, and I don't know where my head was at. I have set up many a calendar before this, I assure you, but for some reason I set this one up really strangely. I just missed a chunk of the Saturday and Sunday columns. I don't know. It's alright, we'll fix it. I've deliberately left a little space that goes above each box that is for a day of the month so that I can put some of this shiny pink iridescent vinyl over the top. I really like how that looks. It's a really cool little effect. And it's a transparent vinyl, so I can add the numbers in there first and then pop this over the top, and it looks really cool and professional and intentional. Adding the numbers here is where I'm going to realize that I did something super weird to the calendar, so that's always fun. You would think after 7 years of bullet journaling that I'd be pretty good at setting up a calendar by this point, but apparently we all have our off days. This was such an off day for me that instead of realizing I was missing some spots, I'm just gonna wrap the numbers around down to my weird extra week there and only realize something's wrong when I hit a 29 and realize I've run out of space for days. Lucky for me, I have a white paint marker and I'm not afraid to use it, and the fact that I'm putting vinyl over the top of these spaces is actually going to hide all of my sins on this spread, so that's a relief. Now that this calendar makes a little bit more sense, I can add my lovely vinyl layers over the top of the numbers, and then we get to decorating. Are you ready for this shiny, shiny reflection? Check this out. I love this effect so much. It's maybe a slightly more bubblegum pink than the other pinks in this setup, but I think I'm just gonna allow that this time because I like it. I don't have anywhere near as much room to play with decoration as I did on the cover page there, so I need to be a bit careful about how I'm layering things, but I think it's all gonna come together pretty well. Also, because this journal is not for me, I always like to make sure I'm including the initial above each column for each day of the week, so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I like my weeks to start on Monday, so that's what I do in the mystery journal too, but if you prefer your weeks to start on a Sunday or on a different day, if you prefer a different system, then you can set your journal up in whatever way works best for you. I feel like the calendar page really needs some of this darker purple paper to add some visual weight to make it balance with the other side, and whenever I want to get a tricky paper to start tearing, I like to just give it a little snip with my scissors in exactly the place I want the tear to begin, and that helps me get things going. Here's a really good example of how I like to use these larger PET tape designs in a smaller space. So I'm placing this one so it fills the corner. I'm going to cut the bottom off straight across here, and I'm going to immediately move that bottom piece up to the top here. This one's pointy on the bottom, which is great because it means I can slot it in between the letters of the days of the week really easily. And I really like this system because less of the design goes to waste than it would if I just cut off the extra part and discarded it. So some parts will still unfortunately end up discarded, but for the most part, they get to be featured in the journal, and I much prefer that. I think what makes the left page really fun is all the extra little floaty bits. Let's move on to our next spread, and these two pages are going to be very functional, so I'm going to do a lot less decoration on these ones and keep things a little bit more minimalist. I wouldn't say that it's a minimalist layout by any means, but it is definitely a little bit less going on this spread than the previous. I'm marking out the area where the planning will take place here with one of my favorite super pale Tombow markers. This one's the 800 Baby Pink. You can barely see it on screen here on the camera, but in real life, I swear it's much more visible than that. This left page is for a goal section and a favorite section, so it's a nice little snapshot of things that you're working towards, but also things that you're currently enjoying. And I find that taking a look at the things that you're currently enjoying is a nice way to bring just a really subtle, gentle gratitude practice into your everyday. Or just on a weekly basis, or at the end of the month, you can look back and be like, this is what I found I was watching on TV this month, or this is the music I was listening to, the podcasts I was enjoying, the music I was enjoying, the games I was playing, the food I was eating, the colors I found myself wearing. It can be anything. Whatever was your favorite in this month, it goes in this section. Also, the goal section, pretty self-explanatory, but if you're someone who's setting goals for the year, using a monthly goal section to break it into more actionable, smaller goals is always a good idea. On the facing page, I'm including a space for one line every day, so just exactly as it sounds, it's an area to write one line about each day, whether that's a continuation of the favorites, maybe a gratitude practice, finding one thing each day that you're grateful for and writing that down, or it can just be like a historical record of the things that you did, so you can be like, on this day, I went to work and saw a movie, or it can be the best quote that you heard that day, or it can be what you learned that day. You can approach this however you like. I always wake up with a different song in my head almost every day, and I'm thinking about including one of these in my journal for next year that just tracks the song I woke up with in my head every day, because I think that would be interesting, just for funsies. And again, because this pen is really, really pale, you can't really tell, but I did make a mistake and draw my lines in the wrong place. So I was trying to do the every second line highlight, and I accidentally put too far away, so this is how I'm fixing it with some sticker paper. It's really obvious, but at least it can still be written over, so it's fine, right? I'm sorry, winner of the mystery journal. I've added a column here for me to put the number for each day of the month down the side here so that the winner of the journal knows when to write in which space. And I always like to include the initial for each day of the week next to those two, because sometimes it's easier to remember what you did on Saturday than what you did on the 4th. And once we've got all of that in place, that's all the functional stuff done. Of course, we need a title, and then we decorate. Despite a couple of little errors, I'm so happy with how this spread turned out, so let's turn the page and move on to the habit tracker. I've deliberately tried to position the actual habit tracking functional part of the page quite high so that I have lots of room to play with my decoration, because I knew I had big pieces and I thought it would be good to kind of give them a moment to shine on a page that's also still quite functional. Every month in the mystery journal is going to have the same pages included. I'm just going to try and vary the way that I set them up so that they look a little bit different each time, but I don't want to be giving the winner of this journal 6 habits worth of tracking space and then taking it away next month when maybe they want to continue tracking those habits. So this way I'm making sure that they can have some consistency from month to month, but also still varying things to give you some ideas and maybe to give them some ideas for what works for them too. This style of habit tracker is one I use pretty often for myself. It's just a tiny calendar times 6, and every time you complete the habit on that day, you draw a circle around the number or you color it in or something like that so that you know that you did the thing. We'll come back to this habit page in a little while and finish up the decoration so that it looks like it blends with the page that is opposite, but for now let's start on that one. This is going to be a mood tracker. I haven't included a mood tracker in a journal in a while, so this was really fun for me to set up. I always like doing them in a kind of illustrative or fun way, so this time I thought it would be fun to do one that I've done for myself in the past quite a bit. This is a doodle style mood tracker, so the little drawings I'm adding at the bottom at the moment are going to be what makes up the tracking of the mood. Each day our winner of the journal will copy one of these little doodles onto a space that signifies that day in order to represent how they were feeling on that day. I've tried to take my inspiration for these little doodles from the PET tape that we're using throughout so that things still feel like they're part of the theme, but I also tried to make them pretty easy little doodles, and I thought that demonstrating how to draw them here would probably be really helpful too. I think most people find tracking mood really helpful in regards to mental health, just kind of keeping an eye on yourself, and then you can notice if things are starting to dip and feel less good. But it can also just be really helpful if you're not someone who really takes stock of yourself too often, just to have a daily check-in and be like, how am I actually feeling? I've got 3 Tombow markers that match the theme here, and I'm just going to use those to make little blobs. 31 of them, in fact, so that each day there is a little colourful blob that has a number assigned to it, and that is where the doodles will go. And what's really fun about a doodle style mood tracker is that if you feel like you experience more than one mood in a day, or if you feel like you fall somewhere in between the moods, then you can combine the doodles and make a little piece of artwork for the day. And even if you had a terrible day, you still ended up making something cute. I definitely recommend planning out your blob placement in advance in pencil because, oh hello Mitsu. While you want a little bit of variation in size and shape, it can be tricky to get exactly the number of blobs that you need for your month, whether that's 28 days for February or 31 for January or 30 for another month. Even if you don't actually stick to your pencil placement, like I kind of didn't really here, you'll still end up with a much more balanced looking page than you would have if you just jumped in and started making blobs at random. I also count mine constantly as I'm going to make sure that I am actually going to end up on track. I was feeling fairly happy with this decoration, but I felt like it just needed a little something extra, so I'm just going to draw a box around it. One of my favorite ways to link things together if it's feeling a little bit like it's not cohesive is to quite literally just link together the bits of decoration that you have with a line, and that's exactly what I'm doing here. It's very close to the outside edge of the page because I had to dodge my habits and I had to dodge my mood tracker, but I really think that finished it off very nicely. In order to get a saturated enough colour out of the 800 Tombow that you could actually see where the blobs were, I've gone over those a few times, so I let those dry down for a while before jumping in with my fine liner because I didn't want it to feather in those kind of wet ink patches, but now they've all got numbers and we can add our last little bits of decoration before we move on to the next spread. We've got 2 pages with different purposes next to each other again here to make up this spread. On the left side, we're going to have the spending log because it would not be an Erin journal without a spending log. I know I don't have one in my own bullet journal anymore, but that's only because I've moved it into a journal all of its own. And on the right page, we're going to have a reflection page, which is for looking back at the month at the end of each month and having a look at what you did well, what you did maybe less well, what you'd like to improve on next month, just kind of taking stock, you know, but not in a dragging yourself down kind of way, just in a constructive way. It's just as much about celebrating your wins as it is looking for areas of improvement. I'm leaving the reflection section fairly open-ended this time, it's just space for some writing. The winner of the journal can divide it up into categories and headings if they want to, but in order to make these pages really look good next to each other, I deliberately made the amount of space for writing in reflections area the same as the size of the spending log, and that way they just feel like they're meant to sit next to each other. It feels very comfortable to your eye. From this spread onwards, I'm starting to introduce some of those floral stickers because I was looking for something that could work in a smaller kind of horizontal space. Most of the PET tape designs are fairly vertically oriented, so I had to kind of turn elsewhere for this one, but I had these on hand, which is great. And I'm doing a similar thing where I'm cutting them in half and using half of the sticker at the top of the page and the other half at the bottom. So it kind of looks like two stickers, but it's really just one. It's very resourceful. I'm also using some of my offcuts from earlier pages as well, just to fill in some gaps. Some of them are supposed to go vertically, but I'm arranging them horizontally if I feel like they still work that way, and this is a case where I could get away with it. I also haven't really left myself any blank page at the top there where I can add my headings, so I'm going to stamp them instead onto my pearly paper, tear those around the side so they kind of match the torn edges of other elements, and then stick those on top of things so they're very easy to read. When it comes to these small pieces of paper that you want to attach to a page, but a glue tape would probably be too big and gangly for it, I really recommend a glue pen. They're amazing. They're just like a little ballpoint pen, but full of glue instead of biro ink, and they are amazing. Sometimes you have to hold your little bit of paper in place for a second first while the glue starts to dry down, but once it's down, that is not coming off. At least not without a fight. I don't ever claim to know what a winner of a journal that I've never met is going to need out of their journal, so I always like to try and bake in some flexibility, and that's what this spread is. This is the spare spread. This is just a spread that I decorate somewhat and then leave quite a bit of space blank on here so that the winner of this journal can use it however they like, whether they want to put something functional here that I haven't already included, or if they just want to play with the extra ephemera that I send along with it, the stickers and the washi tape and stuff. Maybe they want to do some memory keeping for the month, maybe they want to collect some inspirational quotes or practice their hand lettering or something like that. This is a space for them to use however they like. And it's pretty quick to set up because it's just the decoration around the outside. We're moving on now to the first of the weeklies, and the weeklies for the mystery journal are something I find pretty challenging because I have to come up with a lot of weeklies really close together for 6 months worth of the year, in fact, over the course of a few weeks. But I do love a challenge, and I always think I come up with some of my most creative things when I'm under pressure like that, so let's have a look at the weeklies I've come up with for January. Typically when I'm setting up weeklies for my own journal, I like them to go from Monday to Sunday, but I didn't want to just ignore the first couple of days of 2025 because it starts on a Wednesday. The 1st of January is a Wednesday. So I'm taking the idea of a gridded layout that has space to track 8 days or 7 days and a note section, and I'm changing some of those spaces into decorative boxes instead and just starting the week from Wednesday and still ending it on Sunday. So it's going to be a short weekly. That's also going to give me a great opportunity to get some full designs in here on the page from that PET tape rather than having to cut them down to squeeze into corners. But it also means I now have to set up 5 weeklies for the month of January, and that's okay, because typically this early into the journal I still have plenty of ideas. Although I don't still have plenty of this washi tape, unfortunately, that's the very last of it on the roll, so I'll need to get creative with some of my decoration for the subsequent weeklies. That's our first weekly done, so let's turn the page and try weekly number 2. For this one, I'm going for a horizontal layout and I'm going to weight all of my decoration to the center of the spread, so it's going to cross the middle of the binding, which is always a bit of a risk when you are working with a journal that you need to last a long time, but you also want to glue a lot of stuff into it. It can be a bit of a risk to the binding, but so far this one's holding up pretty well. I'm going to have two separate pieces of the purple origami paper, one on each side of the binding, and then I'm going to stick them down kind of over the middle with some of the PET tape. But first, let's add our second line highlights so that everything looks nice and consistent with the rest of the theme. Remember my weird, badly set up calendar from earlier? Well, we're going to revisit that a little bit here because I'm going to write completely the wrong numbers in spaces for these dates, and I'm not even going to realize it until I'm on another spread, but it's okay, I will come back and fix them. So I realize we don't start the second week on the 1st. Incorrect dates aside, this is a very quick and easy weekly to set up, so I do recommend it if you don't mind a horizontal weekly. I tend to prefer vertical weeklies myself, but every now and then the aesthetic of a horizontal one just gets me. Moving on to another weekly layout that's pretty quick and easy to set up. This one is more of a vertical style layout, but the boxes have the decoration through the center of the page again, horizontally this time instead of vertically. This is actually going to be our most minimal spread throughout the whole setup. I just didn't feel like the large PET tape designs really worked here. I didn't want to eat into the planning space on each of the weeklies, so this time we're just going to have a little strip of pretty through the middle, and the highlights on the boxes are going to do most of the heavy lifting towards making the page look full. That said, this is very much before the pen, obviously, so once the winner of this journal has populated this layout with their events and tasks for each day, it's going to look much more interesting then too. Unfortunately, I had some trouble with one of the files from this part of the video. It corrupted and I wasn't able to use it in the video, so we're going to jump ahead in time a little bit here, but it's a pretty easy one to decorate. I don't feel like you're missing too much by missing that part of the video. All the same, very sorry about the time traveling there. Also, if you're someone who has been watching my channel for a while and you're looking at this layout and this theme and you're thinking, Erin, what's with all the butterflies? I thought you didn't like butterflies. That is the beauty of the mystery journal. I can do things in this journal that I would never do for myself. That said, yes, there are a lot of butterflies involved here, but I think the PET tape is beautiful enough overall that I would actually use that one in my own journal at some point. Definitely the reading journal, if not my bullet journal. And this is the point, with all the decoration down on the page and the names for each day of the week, that I flip back to work out what number I'm supposed to start on here and realize I have royally messed up my numbering on my weeklies. Whoopsie. Let's fix that and then continue. Truly though, if you are someone who's very mistake averse, I could not recommend a white paint marker enough, especially if you are working in a journal that has pure white pages like this one does. Mine is from a set of paint markers from Peter Pauper Press, and it is my favourite that I have tried, but there are plenty of others out there as well. I have the one that I use linked in the description, but you could get a Posca paint marker. Some people like the ArtX ones. There are plenty to try. Now that all my dates are actually sorted out correctly, let's move on to another weekly. This time I'm going to be introducing that washi tape that I mentioned way back at the start that I haven't used at all so far, partly because the other washi tape ran out and I needed something a little bit more narrow for this one, and also partly because I've decided I do really like it with the theme. I wasn't sure for a while, but once we introduced the vines, which have some green on them, I felt like this one worked a little bit better than I expected. We're also going to skip the dark purple paper for this one, so it's going to be a much more light and airy take on a weekly, and we are going to include some of the pearlescent paper from the envelopes because I haven't used that for a few spreads. I just felt like I needed something above and below the calendar boxes on this weekly, so adding this washi tape in really just filled in that space really nicely, and it had me wishing I'd used it elsewhere in the theme, but I also didn't feel like there was space to go back through and add it afterwards, so it's just going to appear on this one spread. And we've got one more weekly left to set up. This one is going to be our very last spread for this video. And it's a weekly that I always revert back to because I just think it's beautiful and it always works. This one has the page divided into 6 squares, both pages, so you've got 12 overall, and you put each of the 7 days of the week in some of them and decoration in others. And I have completely ripped this one off the lovely Ruthie journals on Instagram. I use it all the time. The size of these squares means that I still won't be able to use a whole piece of the PET tape as decoration, but I will be able to cut some of them down and use some of the vines and that kind of thing, so I'm cutting out some squares to go down in those spaces as the basis for the background, some in purple and some in the pearly white. And I'm going to layer other things on top of those. The straight edge cutting tool is so handy for this kind of setup. You can just mark on the back of each piece of paper where you want the cuts to go, and it's very easy to transfer onto other pieces if you want to make them all the same size. Very proud to report I didn't make any mistakes on the lettering or the numbering of the weekly this time around. Improvement! I was really paying attention by this point. I wasn't feeling like troubleshooting anything else. The weeklies are done, and that means January in the Mystery Journal is complete. I've ended up really enjoying this theme. As many mistakes as there are, I think it is still cute. Since January is the very beginning of a new year, I wanted to take the opportunity to wish you all the best for 2025. I hope it's a spectacular year for you, and that at the end of 2025 you have so many good memories to look back on. I also hope that you're enjoying the new journal, new planner season that is the end of the year. I always really look forward to this time of year because I think it's so much fun. Have you chosen your journal for next year, and have you started setting it up yet? Let me know. If you enjoyed this January setup but maybe it wasn't quite the right fit for you, I have another January setup from last year's mystery journal in case you'd like to check that one out. It's a very cute Paris theme. And underneath that is a link to the initial setup for my own new journal for 2025.